Okay, so you want to buy a football club. Own the team. Hear 70,000 people sing your players' names and lift trophies from a private box while the whole city loves you. Here's the strange part, football clubs are some of the most valuable sports assets on earth, worth billions, fought over by oil states and hedge funds, and most of them lose money every single year on purpose, and the owners keep writing the checks anyway. By the end of this video, you'll know where a club's money actually comes from, why buying the trophy machine and buying a profitable business are almost opposite goals, and why the richest people alive line up to own something that bleeds cash. This channel breaks down the real economics of businesses like this one, so subscribe if you want the honest math instead of the highlight reel. So let's go shopping, because clubs come in tiers, and they are wildly different purchases. At the bottom is the lower league club, 4th or 5th division, a small stadium, a loyal local crowd, and a balance sheet held together with tape. You can buy one of these for a few million, sometimes less, and plenty have been bought for a single symbolic pound, because the buyer was really agreeing to absorb the debt. Cheap to buy, terrifying to own. The middle tier is the established top-flight club outside the elite, a real stadium, a real fan base, a place in a major league. Depending on the country, these trade from tens of millions into the low hundreds of millions. And then there's the trophy tier, the global brands. When a consortium led by Todd Boehly and Clearlake Capital bought Chelsea in 2022, the deal was worth about £2.5 billion up front, with another £1.75 billion pledged for future investment, the most expensive takeover in sports history at the time. You are not buying a football team at that level. You are buying a global media brand that happens to kick a ball on weekends. Now, where do you actually buy one? 3 doors, and each attracts a different kind of buyer. Door 1, the trophy purchase, an elite club sold by an owner cashing out or forced out. Rare, ferociously expensive, and usually contested by nation-states and private equity. Door 2, the sensible-ish middle, a solid club with a good stadium and room to grow, bought as a project you intend to build up and maybe sell higher later. This is where most rational money goes, if the word rational belongs anywhere near this business. Door 3 is the bargain bin. The distressed club drowning in debt and facing relegation. This is the £1 special, and it's exactly as dangerous as it sounds. Ken Bates famously bought Chelsea in 1982 for £1, back when the club's debts were crushing it. The pound was never the price. The debt you inherit is the price, and a relegation can turn that debt into a black hole overnight. And here's the cost nobody warns you about, the wage bill, and it is unlike any expense in normal business. In most companies, if revenue falls, you cut costs and survive. In football, your biggest cost is player wages. Those wages are locked into multi-year contracts, and if you try to save money by spending less, your team loses, and losing costs you far more than the wages ever did. You are trapped in an arms race where standing still means falling behind. Across the Premier League, total wages were projected to reach around £4.3 billion, and for many clubs, wages eat the majority of everything they earn. And the gap between divisions is a cliff, not a step. Reaching the Premier League is often called the most valuable prize in sport, because a single promotion can be worth well over £100 million in broadcast money alone. Relegation runs the same cliff in reverse. That one drop in the standings can slice your income in half while your contracted wages stay exactly where they were, and that mismatch is where clubs go to die. Okay, the deal is done. You own a club. Now let's talk about where the money actually comes from, because it arrives through 3 taps, and they are not the ones fans think. Tap 1, broadcast money, and for most clubs this is the biggest by far. Leagues sell the television rights collectively and split the pot among clubs. In the Premier League, broadcast revenue reached about £3.4 billion across all clubs in the 2024-25 season. Sky and TNT paid a record £6.7 billion for a domestic rights cycle starting in 2025-26. That's the tap that makes English football unusually rich, and it's why simply being in the Premier League is worth a fortune before you sell a single ticket. Tap 2, commercial money, sponsorship, the shirt deal, the stadium naming rights, merchandise, and increasingly, using the stadium on non-match days for concerts and events. For the biggest clubs, this has become the single largest tap. Across Deloitte's Money League, commercial revenue passed €5 billion for the first time, the biggest of the 3 streams, averaging around €265 million per club at the top. This is the tap the elite clubs can grow almost without limit because it runs on brand, not on stadium size. A club with 1 billion fans worldwide can sell shirts, sponsorships, and partnerships in every market on earth. And Liverpool became the highest-earning English club partly by squeezing more concerts and events out of Anfield on the days no match is played. Tap 3, Matchday money, tickets, hospitality, the pie and the pint. And here's the surprise, this is usually the smallest tap. Across the major European leagues, matchday income is only about 10 to 15% of total revenue. The roaring crowd you're paying billions for is the least of your income. Think of a modern club as a television show that occasionally sells tickets to the live studio audience. The audience matters, the atmosphere matters, but the real money is the broadcast and the brand. The Premier League clubs figured this out years ago. Matchday revenue only crossed £1 billion collectively for the first time in 2024-25, while broadcast alone was more than 3 times that. If this is already changing how you see your favorite club, hit like. It takes 1 second. So with 3 fat taps of money pouring in, billions of pounds, global brands, sold-out stadiums, how on earth do these clubs lose money? Here's where the fantasy meets the accounts. The answer is that almost every pound that comes in the front door goes straight out the back to players. Wages, transfer fees, and agent payments consume it all, and then some. This is the iron law of football finance. Revenue and player costs rise together, forever, because the moment you earn more, you spend it chasing better players because your rivals are doing exactly the same thing, and nobody dares stop first. It's a race where the prize for running faster is simply the right to keep running. If every club suddenly earns an extra 100 million from a new television deal, that money doesn't become profit, it becomes the new price of the best strikers, because 20 clubs are now bidding for the same players with the same fresh 100 million in their pockets. The wages go up, the transfer fees go up, the agents take their slice, and the league is exactly as competitive as it was before, only more expensive. Economists have a name for this kind of trap, and football lives in it permanently. Look at Chelsea, the perfect illustration. For the 2024-25 season, the club announced a pre-tax loss of £262 million, the biggest single-season loss in Premier League history. And this came despite bringing in about £490 million in revenue, the second highest in the club's history. Sit with that. Nearly £500 million of revenue, a Conference League trophy, a Club World Cup, a 4th-place finish, and still a record-shattering loss because the spending on players outran even that mountain of income. And the parent company's losses over 2 seasons reportedly ran past £1 billion, driven, in their own words, by investment in the playing squad. This is not incompetence. It's the structure of the game, which is why the regulators finally stepped in. From the 2025-26 season, UEFA enforces a squad cost rule, capping spending on wages, transfers, and agent fees at 70% of a club's revenue. Read that the other way around. Before the cap, many clubs wanted to spend even more than 70% of everything they earned on the squad. The authorities had to legally forbid clubs from setting fire to more money than they make. And this is education, not financial advice, so please don't buy a football club on the strength of a YouTube video. So how does anyone win this game? 2 ways, and they're very different. Way 1, you don't buy the club to profit from the club, you buy it for everything around it. Some owners target the real estate, redeveloping the stadium and surrounding land into apartments, hotels, and shops that print money on the 330 days there isn't a match. The club is the anchor tenant. The property is the business. Way 2, you run it as a selling club, a talent factory. You scout young players cheaply, develop them, win enough to stay competitive, and then sell your best players every summer for enormous profits, funding the whole operation through the transfer market instead of trophies. Clubs that master this can post profits while the trophy-chasing giants post losses, and their fans make a quiet peace with watching their best player leave every year. It's a business model, just not a romantic one. Now, the graveyard, because ambition kills clubs constantly. The classic killer is the relegation trapdoor. A club spends big to compete, locks in top-flight wages on long contracts, then gets relegated, and the broadcast money collapses while the wage bill doesn't. Leeds United is the textbook case. A club that overspent chasing the dream, dropped out of the Premier League in 2004, and spent years in financial wreckage, selling its stadium and training ground just to survive. The drop didn't just cost them a league place, it nearly cost them their existence. The second killer is the debt finance takeover, where an owner buys the club using loans and then loads those loans onto the club itself, so the club is effectively paying for its own purchase while trying to compete. It has hollowed out storied names and turned devoted fan bases into protest movements, marches, boycotts, and banners aimed at the very people who own the badge. And this is where we can finally answer why those £1 clubs from door 3 are priced like that. A club selling for a token pound is never cheap. The pound is a signal that the debts and the wage commitments are so large that someone is being paid, in effect, to take the problem away. Rule number 1 of this business: you never buy the football club, you buy its liabilities, and the trophy cabinet is just the decoration on top of the bill. Both killers share one root. In football, the punishment for ambition is delayed, not cancelled. You spend today to win, and the bill arrives 2 seasons later, usually at the worst possible moment. Let's calculate what you actually earn. 2 scenarios. Optimistic scenario, the well-run selling club. You bought a solid top-flight team for, say, $300 million. You keep wages disciplined, develop young talent, and sell 2 or 3 stars over a few seasons for $200 million in pure profit. You stay in the league, the broadcast money keeps flowing, and the club's valuation climbs with the rising tide of television deals. You may never win a major trophy, but you could sell the whole club years later for far more than you paid. On paper, a genuine investment. Realistic, messy scenario, the trophy chase. You bought the big brand for $2 billion. You spend relentlessly to compete, you post losses of 1, 2, even $300 million a year, you pump in your own cash just to satisfy the rules, and your reward is a cup, a good season, and an accountant who cries at night. You are not earning a return. You are buying glory, influence, and a global brand, and paying for it in annual losses that would sink any normal company. So why do billionaires and nations keep buying? Because at the very top, a football club stopped being an investment and became something else. It's a trophy asset, a soft power tool for a country, a brand that buys you relevance in every corner of the planet, and a scarce one. There are only so many historic clubs and they almost never come up for sale. The losses are the membership fee for a club that money alone can't always get you into. And there's a bet underneath it that the value of the club itself keeps rising fast enough that you profit when you eventually sell, even after all those years of losses. Consider the arc of Chelsea's ownership. Roman Abramovich bought the club for about £140 million in 2003, poured in enormous sums, absorbed years of losses, and the club was eventually sold in 2022 for around £2.5 billion. 2 decades of losses on the income statement, and a fortune made on the sale price. That is the whole game in one sentence. You lose money every year running the club, and you hope to make it all back, and more, the day you hand over the keys. So far, for the elite clubs, that bet has mostly paid off. Drop a comment, and I read everyone. Would you rather own the boring selling club that quietly turns a profit, or the glamorous giant that wins trophies and loses a fortune? And subscribe before you go, because next we're doing the economics of owning a Formula One team, where the budget is capped, the sponsors are oil giants, and the losses come with a very different kind of math. Because in football, the old saying has it backwards. It's not that the best team wins. It's that the richest owner gets to lose the most money and call it a trophy.